At 11:52 p.m., the hospital's west entrance breathed out damp air and fluorescent fatigue. And Isabella Hassan stood under the concrete awning with her shoulders locked against the cold, while rain slashed across the parking lot in silver lines. Her badge cord had left a red groove at the back of her neck. Her right foot throbbed in time with her pulse where the seam of her shoe had split 2 days earlier. And the paper cup in her hand held coffee that had gone bitter and cold before midnight rounds even started. She stared at the bus schedule glowing through droplets on the plexiglass panel. Then at the rideshare app she could not afford. Then at the folded envelope in her bag, with rent past due, stamped in block letters that looked louder each time she saw them. She had spent 12 hours translating fear into manageable sentences for other people. Men with oxygen masks, women gripping bed rails, a teenage son signing consent forms because his mother's hands shook too hard to hold the pen. In room after room, she had kept her voice level, precise, useful. And at the end of the shift, one resident had thanked her by name while running to the next emergency. She had nodded, because there was no time for pride and no room for collapse in a corridor that always smelled like disinfectant and overheated plastic. On her break, she had eaten half a granola bar from the bottom of her tote and saved the rest for later, then forgotten where she put it. Now the later had arrived. She set the cup on a metal ledge, unzipped the smallest pocket of her bag, and counted her cash under the awning light. 20, 20, 1, 1, 1. $43. She slid the bills back into place with fingers gone stiff from cold and pulled the rent notice out just long enough to reread the total due and the warning line about formal action if payment was not received by Friday. Friday sat 3 days away, like a locked door. Legal fees had eaten her savings in careful bites over 5 months of custody motions and continuances. And every invoice from her attorney carried the same professional politeness that translated to pay now or lose ground. She tucked the notice away before the ink could smear and pressed the heel of her palm against her sternum until her breathing steadied. "Bella, you're still here?" She turned. Noura from triage stood in the glow of the automatic doors with a hood pulled over her scrub cap and a sandwich wrapped in foil in one hand. Rain drummed harder on the awning, making everything feel sealed in. "Bus," Isabella said. Noura looked at her face for 1 second too long, then held out the sandwich. "Take this. Turkey. My son made 2 by accident." Isabella hesitated, then accepted it because refusal took more energy than gratitude. "Tell him thank you. Tell him yourself when your world gets less cruel," Noura said, already stepping backward. "And eat it, not tomorrow. Tonight." The doors hissed shut behind her. Isabella stood alone again, foil warm in her palm, and a sharp ache moved through her chest at the ordinary kindness of being seen for exactly 10 seconds. By the time the bus reached South Boston, rain had turned from hard to relentless. She got off 2 stops early because the route had changed overnight, then walked the last 12 minutes with her hood flattened to her hair and water creeping through the cracked sole of her right shoe. Wind shoved at her from the harborside streets. Her tote strap cut into her shoulder where the legal folder sat heavy as a brick. She passed lit windows where people leaned over kitchen islands, where televisions painted family rooms in blue light, where steam clouded glass above sinks. At the corner bodega, a delivery truck idled with its doors open and music spilling into the rain. She kept moving. Her building rose from the block like it had given up arguing with time. Peeling paint, mailboxes with bent doors, a front step that held water in a shallow dip no landlord had ever fixed. Inside, the hallway smelled of damp plaster and old cooking oil. The radiator on the second-floor landing rattled loudly and gave off no heat. By the time she reached the 3rd floor, Her calves trembled from the climb, and she had to stop at her own door to unlock it twice because her fingers would not grip the key cleanly the first time. The apartment was dark except for the microwave clock and a small nightlight in the living room shaped like a crescent moon. It was colder inside than the hallway. She shut the door quietly, slid both locks, and leaned back against the wood while rain tapped at the windows in impatient bursts. Her body wanted to drop straight to the floor, but routine moved her before thought did. Shoes off, wet coat on the chair, bag on the table. Check the windows, check the stove knob. Check Lena. Lena slept on the pull-out sofa under 2 blankets, and a child-size winter coat zipped up to her chin, one hand tucked inside the sleeve like she had hidden it there for warmth. Her dark curls stuck to her forehead in soft loops. The humidifier had run dry again, and the little machine gave a weak clicking sound, as if protesting the empty tank. Isabella crossed the room on silent feet, filled it from the kitchen pitcher, and set it back beside Lena's favorite book, the one about a fox who outsmarted a storm. The girl did not wake, only sighed and turned her face into the pillow. The landlord had texted that morning. Parts on back order. Heat should improve next week. Thank you for your patience. Patience had become another bill she paid, without choosing it. Isabella touched Lena's cheek with the back of 2 fingers, checking temperature, habit layered over fear. Warm, steady. She loosened the coat zipper half an inch so her daughter could breathe easier, then tucked the blanket higher around her shoulders. On the coffee table lay a worksheet with crooked handwriting and a yellow crayon sun in the top corner. Underneath it sat 2 unopened envelopes from the utility company and a pink reminder card from family court with next month's hearing date circled in blue ink. She went to the kitchen and turned the faucet to hot. It ran lukewarm, then colder, then finally warmed enough to sting her hands back to life. She unwrapped Nora's sandwich and ate half standing at the counter, chewing slowly because her stomach had narrowed into a tight knot over weeks of skipped meals and quick calories. The refrigerator hummed with almost nothing inside. Yogurt, mustard, a half onion, milk, and 1 container of lentil soup she had made on Sunday and stretched across 3 nights. She wrapped the rest of the sandwich for Lena's lunch and wrote, "For tomorrow," on a sticky note with a pen that kept catching. Her phone buzzed twice on the table. Unknown number. Then another unknown number. Debt collection agency, likely the one that had started calling her mother last week despite written requests to stop. She turned the phone face down and opened her bank app anyway, because dread grew sharper when she avoided it. Current balance, $118.27. Pending debit, pharmacy copay, auto pay in 2 days, internet bill, reduced plan. She closed the app before the numbers could settle into despair. At 12:41 a.m., she spread her legal papers across the table and added 3 receipts to a folder labeled childcare and transportation. Her attorney had told her to keep everything, date everything, document everything. Judges liked chronology. Judges liked clean files and unemotional language. She printed screenshots when she could borrow hospital printers on break and paid for certified copies she had no spare money for because evidence was the only armor that counted in court. Across from her, the rent notice sat under a chipped salt shaker to keep it from curling. Beneath the warning line, her own handwriting in black pen listed possible payment arrangements with arrows and question marks that looked frantic even in silence. At 1:18 a.m., she finally stood, turned off the kitchen light, and lowered herself onto the thin mattress beside the pull-out sofa so she would hear Lena if she coughed. Her spine ached from the day in straight lines. Neck, lower back, knees. Rain softened to a steady hiss outside. Somewhere in the building, a couple argued in low, exhausted voices. Then a door shut, then quiet. She closed her eyes and saw the hospital elevator numbers descending, then the rent total, then the judge's expression from last hearing. Polite, skeptical, unconvinced by tears she had refused to shed in that room. Sleep came in narrow slices. At 5:36 a.m., her alarm vibrated against the wood floor, and she woke with her jaw clenched hard enough to hurt. The room was still cold. She dressed in layers beside the sofa, moving carefully so she would not wake Lena too soon. Then warmed water on the stove for instant oatmeal and packed a lunchbox with a sandwich half, an apple cut into thin moons, and crackers in a reused plastic container. When Lena stirred, Isabella knelt beside her and brushed curls from her eyes. "Morning, Habibti." Lena blinked, then smiled sleepily. "Is it snow?" "Just rain." Isabella helped her sit up and held out the coat. "Big rain." Lena made a face at the coat and then surrendered to it. Small arms reaching through sleeves with practiced resignation no 6-year-old should have needed. "Can we get the Fox book from the library again tonight? If we finish homework and if Mama gets out on time." "You always say if." Isabella kissed her forehead. "I know." By 6:22 a.m., they were at the bus stop under a narrow shelter with 3 other commuters and a puddle that kept widening toward their shoes. Lena leaned against her side, warm and drowsy, humming to herself while she watched tires spray water across the curb. Isabella checked the weather, checked the transit app, checked the school portal for notices, checked her work messages from the catering supervisor, confirming call time for the private luncheon after her hospital morning assignment. 2 jobs in one day again. She typed yes, confirmed, and slipped the phone back into her pocket before another unknown number could flash across the screen. At 7:04 a.m., after drop-off, she stood outside the elementary school fence for a moment longer than necessary, watching Lena disappear into the building with her backpack bouncing and one mitten clipped to the zipper. Other parents moved past in wool coats, takeaway coffees, clean boots. Isabella caught her reflection in the glass entrance doors. Damp hair pulled tight, under-eye shadows, hospital ID tucked into her coat because she had forgotten to switch bags. Competent, tired, present. She drew one slow breath, then turned toward the train that would take her back across the city. The hospital swallowed hours without apology. She translated discharge instructions, insurance disclaimers, post-operative risks, family arguments disguised as questions for the physician. At 12:47 p.m., she signed out, changed shoes in a staff restroom stall, and ran a comb through her hair under buzzing fluorescent lights before rushing to the second job in a building where marble floors reflected chandeliers like still water. The lobby smelled of white lilies and expensive polish. A uniformed concierge looked at her wet umbrella and then away. In the service corridor behind the penthouse kitchen, steam clouded the air above warming trays while someone shouted table numbers and dietary notes. Isabella tied on a black apron over her plain blouse and checked place cards one more time, her hands moving with the same exactness she brought to medical terms. 12 guests, 2 courses, sparkling water left, still water right. The chef wanted no delays, no substitutions, no conversation beyond protocol. She nodded at each instruction as if she were not running on 4 hours of broken sleep and caffeine. When she had 10 seconds alone beside the stainless prep counter, she pulled out her phone and opened the photo Lena's teacher had sent that morning. Lena holding a paper fox with a crooked smile and glue on her sleeve. Isabella touched the screen lightly, then locked the phone and tucked it back into her apron pocket like a promise she could carry through the day. Outside the service door, laughter rolled through the penthouse in polished waves, bright and effortless, and she stepped forward before anyone could call her name. Outside the service door, Laughter rolled through the penthouse in polished waves, bright and effortless. And Isabella stepped forward before anyone could call her name. Crystal threw fractured light across the dining room, splintering over silver cutlery and the white linen she had pressed with her own hands 40 minutes earlier. And she adjusted the tray against her palm as she moved between chairs with practiced economy. Sparkling water left, still water right. Bread basket first from the host's side. Her smile stayed neutral. Her spine stayed straight. Her stomach pinched hard enough to make her dizzy when the scent of butter and rosemary rose from the plated fish. "Miss Hassan." The voice came from her right, clipped and low. Nadine, the penthouse events manager, stood near the grand piano with a tablet against her chest and disapproval sharpened into a polite expression. "You are standing in the wrong light." For 1 second, Isabella thought she had misheard. Then she followed Nadine's eyes and realized her shoulder cast the smallest shadow across a guest's place setting, a soft blur on porcelain under the chandelier. Nadine smiled without warmth. "Move 3 feet back when the principal speaker addresses the table. We don't want visual interruption." 2 guests turned to look at her. One woman's mouth curved in faint amusement before she lifted her wineglass again. Heat crawled up Isabella's neck. She murmured, "Yes, ma'am," and stepped back exactly 3 feet, tray steady even while her wrist trembled. She had translated consent for emergency surgery at dawn, held panic in place with language precise enough to keep families from breaking. And now she was being corrected for standing in light that cost more than her monthly rent. The luncheon speech began. Investment language, market confidence, expansion corridors, phrases that floated above the room like perfume, expensive and untouchable. Isabella moved in the margins of it, replacing forks, clearing salad plates, shifting silently behind tailored suits and watches with faces the size of her daughter's lunchbox lid. At the table's far end, a man she recognized from a legal ad campaign laughed too loudly and said, "Domestic disputes are always theater until the paperwork lands." The men around him answered with practiced chuckles. Isabella kept her face blank and reached for a bread plate before her fingers could curl. At 2:13 p.m., her phone vibrated once in her apron pocket. School app notification. She waited until she reached the service corridor, then checked it with damp fingers. Lena's aftercare program had a staffing issue and would close at 3 instead of 5:30. Pickup required, no exceptions. Isabella closed her eyes briefly, pressing her forehead to the cool steel edge of a prep table, while cooks called orders around her. She typed 3 messages in under a minute. One to her neighbor, Mrs. Donnelly, asking for emergency pickup. One to the school office with permission confirmation. One to Nadine requesting 10 minutes after dessert service to make a call. Nadine answered in person, appearing at the corridor threshold like an audit. No personal disruptions on event floor. "My daughter's program closed early. I've arranged pickup. I just need..." "Handle it after coffee service," Nadine said. "The host is very particular." Isabella nodded because argument would cost her the shift. By the time she got Mrs. Donnelly on the phone, the older woman was already in line at the school gate and promised to keep Lena until 6. Relief hit so suddenly, Isabella had to grip the counter to steady herself. She whispered, "Thank you," twice, then returned to the dining room with espresso cups lined in perfect rings on her tray. The room had changed while she was gone. A new guest stood beside the host near the windows, rain streaking the glass behind him in gray vertical lines. Karim Darzi wore a charcoal suit so precisely tailored it looked poured onto him, his tie pin glinting when he turned, his smile familiar enough to tighten every muscle in her body. He had not been on the place cards. He had not been announced. He was simply there, as if doors opened for him by instinct. He saw her before she could look away. "Isabella, His voice carried just enough for 3 nearby guests to hear. Warm, cultured, intimate in the way that forced witnesses into assumptions. "I did not realize you were on staff here." She set a demitasse in front of a woman with lacquered red nails and answered without meeting his eyes. "Excuse me, sir." Karim stepped into her service path, still smiling. Such formality. Nadine appeared instantly, hand hovering near Isabella's elbow, but not touching. "Is there an issue, Mr. Darcy?" "None at all." Karim's gaze stayed on Isabella. "My former wife and I are discussing scheduling for our daughter. Family logistics. Always difficult when routines are unstable." One of the men at the table leaned back to look at Isabella directly, interest brightening his expression in a way that felt like being pinned. Nadine's professional mask shifted into curiosity, then caution. Isabella could feel the room recalibrating around the word former wife, around class, around assumptions she had spent months trying to outrun. Karim lowered his voice, but he stood close enough for her to catch every syllable. "You missed your counsel's response window this morning. Again." Her throat tightened. She had seen the email subject line and marked it unread to handle after work. "This isn't the place." "It is always the place when it concerns Lena." His jaw twitched once beneath a smile, quick as a skipped frame. Judges trust consistency, Isabella. They trust people who show up composed. He flicked a glance over her apron, the tray in her hand. Not a tired woman with 2 jobs and no witnesses. The words landed cleanly, designed to leave no bruise visible from outside. She felt the old instinct to shrink, to preserve peace for later, rise like nausea, and she crushed it under the weight of the tray. "Step aside." Something sharpened in his eyes at her tone, then smoothed. He moved half an inch, enough to make refusal seem impolite rather than obstructive. "Call me tonight. We can avoid further embarrassment if you cooperate." Nadine cleared her throat. "Mr. Darcy, coffee is being served." Karim angled away as if he had offered a courtesy, not a threat. "Of course." He accepted a cup from Isabella with fingertips that never quite touched hers. "Thank you." She finished service with her pulse pounding at the base of her neck. Every laugh in the room sounded pointed. Every glance from staff carried that restrained curiosity people wore when they smelled private damage and wanted details without responsibility. By 3:07 p.m., as rain thickened against the windows and thunder rolled somewhere over the harbor, she was in the corridor collecting empty creamers with hands that could not stop shaking. Nadine intercepted her near the linen cart. "Whatever your history is with that guest, keep it outside this household. We maintain standards." Isabella swallowed the first reply that came to her and chose the one that kept her employed. "Understood." "Good." Nadine checked her tablet. "You're released after sideboard inventory. And take your child through the service exit only. The host prefers discretion." By the first week of November, she had learned that discretion was another word for invisibility in rooms like this. She signed the inventory sheet, changed out of the apron, and met Mrs. Donnelly downstairs in the staff lobby at 5:42 p.m., where Lena stood in a yellow raincoat with her backpack clipped tight and her paper fox folded carefully in one pocket. Isabella thanked Mrs. Donnelly with an apology she had repeated too many times this month, then crouched to zip Lena's coat to her chin and kiss the top of her damp curls. "You okay, Habibti?" Lena nodded, then pressed closer without speaking. They took the service elevator to the garage level because the rain had turned hard again. Water hammered the ramp outside, pooling under sodium lights. A valet in a navy coat waited near the exit lane with a ring of keys and a posture that looked pulled too tight. He kept glancing toward the far curb where a black armored sedan idled with its headlights off, rain sheeting across its windshield. When he noticed Isabella watching, he looked away so quickly he dropped the keys. They hit concrete with a brittle metallic scatter that made Lena flinch. "Sorry," he muttered, kneeling to gather them. His hands shook hard enough that 2 keys slipped through his fingers again. "Long day?" Isabella gave a brief nod, guiding Lena toward the pedestrian gate. The valet straightened, forced a smile at no one, and glanced back at the sedan. A rear door opened 2 inches, then shut. No one stepped out. The skin along Isabella's arms prickled under her wet sleeves. She told herself it was the cold, the adrenaline from seeing Karim, the accumulated exhaustion of a week built on too little sleep. At the gate, she signed the exit log, noted the time stamped in blue ink, and stepped onto the sidewalk where traffic hissed through standing water. Lena stayed unusually quiet on the bus ride home, forehead against the window, tracing raindrops with one finger as they raced each other down the glass. Usually, she narrated everything: the dog in a sweater at the stoplight, the woman carrying tulips in a storm, the shape of clouds over the bridge. Tonight, she said nothing until they climbed the 3rd-floor stairs and reached their apartment landing, smelling of damp plaster and old smoke. Isabella shifted grocery bags to her left hand and reached for her keys. Lena caught her sleeve. "Mama." The single word came out small and strained. Isabella looked down. Lena's face had gone pale beneath her curls, lower lip tucked inward the way she did when trying not to cry. "What is it?" Lena's eyes fixed on the door. "Last night, when you were at the hospital, I woke up and heard breathing on the other side." The hallway seemed to narrow. Rain drummed against the building in uneven bursts, louder suddenly, as if the storm had pressed itself against their walls. Isabella kept her voice level with effort she could feel in her teeth. "Did Mrs. Donnelly hear it?" Lena shook her head. "I didn't tell. I thought maybe I dreamed, but it was like this." She inhaled through her mouth, shallow and rough, then stopped. "Right there." Isabella set the bags down without noise, pulled Lena behind her, and bent toward the peephole. At first, she saw only the opposite wall with its cracked paint and the dim yellow bulb at the stairwell bend. Then a shadow shifted at the edge of view, quick and receding, followed by the soft thud of footsteps descending too fast to belong to a neighbor carrying groceries. A second later, stale cigarette smoke drifted under the doorframe, thin but unmistakable. Her throat closed around air that suddenly felt too thick. She straightened, hand already reaching for her phone, thumb hovering between emergency call and Mrs. Donnelly's number, while Lena's small fingers knotted in the back of her coat, and the storm struck the windows hard enough to rattle the glass. She did not press either number right away. She turned the deadbolt with careful, quiet movements, then slid the chain into place and guided Lena toward the sofa with a hand on her shoulder that she kept steady by force. "Shoes off, Habibti. Stay where you can see me." Lena obeyed without argument, which frightened Isabella more than tears would have. Isabella picked up the grocery bags, set them on the counter, then checked the windows one by one, testing each latch until metal clicked against metal. The stale smoke under the door thickened, then thinned, as if whoever had stood outside had finally moved down the stairwell and out into the rain. Her pulse still refused to settle. She called Mrs. Donnelly first. "Did anyone come up tonight asking for us?" Isabella kept her voice low. A beat of silence, then the older woman answered, "No one came to my door. Why?" "Lena heard someone outside ours last night. I just heard footsteps running down. I'm coming up." "No." Isabella looked at Lena, who sat rigid under the yellow coat, hugging her paper fox to her chest. "Don't come out in this weather. Just If anyone asks, call me first. Mrs. Donnelly exhaled, worried and practical. I'll keep my hall light on all night. After she hung up, Isabella opened her evidence folder on the kitchen table and added a fresh page. November 7th, 6:21 p.m. Possible person outside apartment door, child statement. Breathing heard previous night, cigarette odor present, retreating footsteps observed through peephole. She took a photo of the time on the microwave, then one of the hallway through the peephole, warped and yellow under weak building lights. Her fingers shook as she attached both to an encrypted note she kept for court documentation. Then, she called the city's non-emergency line. She gave her name, apartment number, custody case docket reference, and the fact pattern without embellishment. The dispatcher's tone was professional but thin with backlog fatigue. Any direct threat made, ma'am? No. Any property damage? No. Then we can log this as suspicious activity and increase patrol pass-through if units are available. If units are available, Isabella repeated, staring at the 2 locks on her door. Yes, ma'am. Keep your door secured. If someone returns, call 911 immediately. She wrote the incident number down in black ink and underlined it twice. External contact made, documented, outcome pending. It was mechanical, almost cold, and the coldness helped her think. Lena's voice came small from the sofa. Are we in trouble? Isabella crossed the room and knelt so they were eye level. We're not in trouble. Someone acted wrong. That is not your fault. Was it Baba? The question hit like a dropped tray on tile, sudden and loud in her chest. She did not lie. I don't know. Lena's lower lip trembled, then steadied. Can I sleep in your bed? Tonight you can sleep wherever you want. Isabella tucked a blanket around her and put water on for lentil soup they did not really want. Because warm food meant routine, and routine meant they were still in charge of this apartment, this hour, this night. By the 2nd week of November, she had started checking the peephole 3 times before every lock turn and recording each unknown call before deleting it. 2 days later, the rain stopped, but the cold sharpened, turning the schoolyard air brittle by 3:10 p.m. Isabella stood at pickup with her scarf looped twice around her neck and one hand wrapped around a paper cup of cafeteria coffee she had not finished. Parents clustered by the gate in work coats and gym jackets. A crossing guard laughed at something a teacher said. Children spilled out in bursts of color and noise, backpacks thumping against small shoulders. For 30 seconds, nothing felt wrong. Then she saw Karim at the curb. He stood beside a gray SUV she had never seen before. Coat collar up, smile bright and social, as if he had arrived for a recital. A manila envelope rested in his left hand. His right thumb tapped the edge in a small, controlled rhythm she remembered from court hallways and closed-door arguments. Jaw still, eyes calculating. Isabella moved toward the gate before Lena emerged. Karim stepped in front of her, still smiling. Good afternoon, he said, loud enough for nearby parents to hear. I have emergency custody papers. A second-grade teacher froze with a clipboard in her arms. The school aide at the gate looked between them, uncertain. Isabella held out her hand. Show me. Karim angled the papers so she could see stamped forms, but not read full text. The school has been informed. That's false. Her voice cracked on the first word, then steadied. You are not listed for pickup without notice. He leaned closer, speaking through his smile. A judge disagreed. Children streamed around them in loose lines. Someone's child cried over a lost mitten. The ordinary noise of pickup kept going while the center of her world narrowed to Karim's mouth and that envelope. "Lena," he called, projecting warmth. Lena appeared from the doorway with her teacher, backpack crooked, paper leaf project in both hands. She saw her father and stopped. The teacher hesitated. Karim took 2 quick steps and caught Lena's wrist. "She comes with me." Isabella lunged. "Let go of her." He shoved her with his forearm, not hard enough to leave a dramatic mark, hard enough to throw her sideways into the metal railing. Pain flashed down her shoulder and into her ribs, bright and nauseating. The coffee cup hit pavement and rolled under a parked car. For 3 seconds, she could not move. The yard tilted. Sound flattened. Her heart hammered against bone so hard she thought she might be sick. Karim pulled Lena toward the SUV, his voice now sharpened beneath civility. "Do not make a scene." Lena cried out, "Mama!" A teacher shouted, "Sir, stop!" but stayed where she was, hand already reaching for her radio without closing the distance. The SUV's rear doors opened. Isabella pushed off the railing, breath tearing in her throat. Her vision tunneled, then snapped clear. Keys, phone, tracker. She had built the sequence at 2 a.m. 1 month earlier and hated herself for believing she might need it. Now her thumb found the cracked screen, swiped into the school app, bypassed attendance, hit the hidden tile disguised as lunch payments, and activated the beacon stitched inside Lena's right shoe insole. A green dot flashed once, then stabilized. Live. She opened a second app, entered the 6-digit phrase she had memorized and never spoken aloud, and sent the pre-written message with location pin. If this arrives, he took her. South Boston Elementary. Plate may be cloned. Response requested now. Recipient, Rafael Vieri. She had sworn she would never ask him for anything after the ER night 18 months earlier, when his nephew came in with a collapsed lung and no one wanted to explain the bruises. She had translated, stabilized panic, kept the boy conscious until surgery, and after that, a black sedan had appeared on her block twice a week. Never close, never intrusive, just visible enough to say someone powerful had noticed. She had changed routes until it stopped. She had archived his number under a fake utilities contact. She had prayed she would die before using it. She hit send, then she pressed 911. 911, what is your emergency? My daughter is being taken from South Boston Elementary by non-custodial parent. Words came clipped and fast, interpreter cadence under shock. Name Karim Darzi. Gray SUV. Partial plate 8 kilo 7, might be false plate. He shoved me. He has no valid pickup order on file. Are you with the child now? No. Vehicle moving, eastbound on Harborview. A horn blared. Tires hissed on wet curb paint. She ran to the corner, eyes locked on the green dot moving across her screen. Behind her, a school administrator reached for her arm. Ma'am, police are coming. You need to stay. I am staying where signal is strong, she snapped, then forced herself to soften. Please preserve gate camera footage, now. Do not overwrite anything. The administrator blinked, startled, then nodded and ran inside. On the line, dispatch asked for Lena's age, clothing, distinguishing details. Isabella answered all of it. 6 years old, yellow raincoat now unzipped, purple backpack with fox keychain, right sneaker lace replaced with red cord because the original snapped last week. She could hear her own breathing between answers, too fast, too sharp. The green dot paused at a light, then moved again. An incoming call broke through. Unknown encrypted number. She accepted without dropping 911. Phone pressed tight against her ear. A man's voice, low and controlled, said, Isabella, She knew it at once, though she had heard it only twice in her life. He took her. I received your signal 34 seconds ago. No wasted comfort. No surprise. Stay where there are witnesses. Keep dispatch open. Tracker is live, heading east. He claimed emergency custody papers. Forged or rushed? A brief pause, voices in the background, doors closing, engines. Do you understand me? Do not pursue on foot. Her knees weakened, rage and terror fighting for oxygen. If he crosses state lines, he will not. His voice dropped, barely contained. I am in motion. The line shifted. She heard him speaking away from the phone, commands precise and immediate. Mateo, block seaport exits. Confirm plate clone sweep. Dario, notify legal counsel and task force liaison. Medical kit in car 2. Now. Dispatch was still in her other ear, coordinating units, asking her to repeat direction of travel. She repeated it. She gave cross streets from memory, street by street, while parents stared and a patrol car skidded to the curb with lights silent and urgent. A female officer approached, hand raised in a calming gesture. Ms. Hassan, I'm Officer Keene. Are you injured? Shoulder impact only. Isabella pointed at her phone. Tracker here. He turned on dry dock, now northbound. Please copy this feed. Keene glanced at the screen, and her posture changed from routine to active threat response. Can you airdrop that to department email? I already sent it to dispatch, an incident report attachment. Good. Keene keyed her radio. We have live civilian tracker data. Possible parental abduction with assault. Request traffic camera pull at Dry Dock and 9th. Across the street, a black armored sedan cut through traffic and stopped so cleanly it looked choreographed. Rear door opened. Rafael Vieri stepped out in a tailored black coat dark as wet asphalt. No umbrella, rain beating across his shoulders, though the storm had already thinned to mist. He moved like the air cleared for him. 2 men followed, one with an earpiece, one carrying a hard case with a red cross patch. Parents went quiet in a ripple. Officer Keene squared her stance, but did not reach for her weapon. She recognized him, or recognized the consequence radius around him. Raphael stopped 3 feet from Isabella, eyes taking in her face, the swelling at her shoulder, the shaking in her hand. Then the moving dot on her screen. Show me. She turned the phone toward him. He read the map once and nodded. He's avoiding main corridors. He knows uniform response patterns. Keene cut in, firm. Sir, this is an active police matter. Raphael met her gaze with formal politeness edged in steel. Then we share the same objective, officer. He took out his own phone and spoke without raising his voice. Counsel, patch me to Detective Rourke in the Child Abduction Task Desk. Immediate. Use my affidavit packet from last spring for verification. He listened for half a second. Yes. Tell them the mother is with uniform and has live beacon confirmation. Isabella stared at him, stunned by the speed, by the way city systems seemed to unlock as he named them. He looked back at her. You did exactly what you were supposed to do. The word struck somewhere deep enough to hurt. She had not realized she needed permission to stop blaming herself for those 3 frozen seconds. Her legs gave once, a brief buckle she could not hide. Raphael caught her elbow, then released at once, careful, deliberate. No claim in the touch. Medic, he said over his shoulder. Check her shoulder and keep her upright. The man with the case knelt beside her and opened sterile wraps. Keene stayed close, still tracking radio updates. Vehicle seen near Industrial District, units converging. Raphael's jaw tightened. He's heading for cover, not distance. He turned to his team. Perimeter first. No heroics. Coordinate with police channels only. He looked at Isabella one more time, voice lower now, but no less final. Stay by Officer Keene. Keep this phone unlocked. If the beacon jumps floors or drops signal, tell me immediately. She swallowed, throat raw. Bring her back. I will. Then he was moving, command gathering around him like weather, while the green dot pulsed on her screen and the city bent toward the hunt. The green dot crawled across the map in uneven bursts, pausing at lights, cutting through side streets, and every time it stopped, Isabella's lungs locked, as if she could hold the vehicle in place by force. Officer Keene kept one hand near her radio and the other open, palm down, signaling calm she did not feel. The medic taped a cold pack against Isabella's shoulder, checked her pupils, asked standard orientation questions, and wrapped a pressure band around her upper arm where the railing had split skin through her coat. She answered automatically while her eyes stayed on the screen. Around them, the pickup crowd thinned into stunned clusters of parents whispering into phones, teachers guiding children toward buses, and 2 patrol units building a perimeter that looked too small for the size of her fear. Raphael's voice cut through the layered radio traffic from 6 feet away. Keene, my counsel has Detective Rourke patched in. Task force accepted shared channel. You will have camera grid in 90 seconds. He turned to the man with the earpiece. Mateo, send Car 3 to Dry Dock North and hold. No engagement unless uniform arrives first. Then to the second guard. Dario, pediatric trauma intake at St. Anne's. No names over open line. Tell them child female, 6, shock protocol likely. His gaze returned to Isabella, and the controlled force in his expression sharpened. Keep the beacon visible. If he kills the phone signal, that shoe tracker remains primary. Officer Keene exhaled through her nose, listening to her radio, then nodded once. Rourke confirms. We've got the feed now. She glanced at Isabella's phone. Ms. Hassan, can you zoom out 2 miles? Isabella did, fingers slick with rain and sweat. The dot moved again, slower now. He's circling, she said, not heading to the interstate. Raphael answered before Keene did. He wants enclosed ground. He thinks enclosed means leverage. The black sedan idled at the curb with its rear door open, heat pouring from the interior in a wave that smelled faintly of leather and antiseptic. Keene made the decision fast. You're both coming with us to staging. She's our live data source. Raphael inclined his head. Understood. He stepped aside to let Keene guide Isabella first, but as they moved, he placed himself between her and the street without looking performative about it, as if his body had an assigned position and had already learned it. His team fanned outward with practiced spacing. No raised voices, no wasted motion. The city noise folded around them and fell behind. 17 minutes later, they rolled past a chain-link fence into an industrial side road lined with shuttered loading bays and sodium lights that turned puddles the color of rust. Patrol cars were already there. An unmarked van with task force insignia sat nose-in near a warehouse corner, and 2 detectives leaned over a hood map lit by a tablet glow. Keene stepped out first, identified Isabella, transferred command, and stayed beside her anyway. Detective Rourke was older than she expected, broad-shouldered, gray at the temples, eyes that missed nothing. Ms. Hassan, I'm going to ask concise questions. Child still in yellow raincoat? Yes. Any known medication needs? No. Father likely armed? Yes. He keeps a handgun in his car lockbox and another at home. Rourke's jaw tightened. He signaled to a tactical officer. Assume 2 firearms. Raphael spoke into his phone in clipped Italian, then switched back to English without missing rhythm. Thermal from rooftop confirms 2 heat signatures on second floor southeast corner. 1 adult pacing, one small seated or crouched. He looked to Rourke. No third signature. Rourke gave him a long, measuring look, then nodded. We go coordinated. My entry lead. Your people stay outside inner threshold. Agreed, Raphael said. The concession was immediate and absolute, and Isabella felt the first narrow thread of air open in her chest. She had expected men like this to collide for dominance. Instead, he gave police command and redirected his power toward support. Routes blocked, medical ahead, legal chain active, witnesses preserved. Inside the staging van, an officer draped a foil blanket around her shoulders and offered water she almost dropped. The map feed mirrored on a larger screen. Lena's beacon pulsed steady in one corner of the warehouse footprint. A family services advocate arrived in a wool coat and introduced herself softly, writing Lena's name on a form while speaking in child-friendly phrases about safe rooms and warm juice boxes and familiar blankets. Raphael stood near the van door, taking calls in low tones that never rose but carried impact. Judge Holloway's clerk has the emergency hearing packet, he said. Good. File digitally and hard copy both. I want chain of custody signatures on school footage before midnight. A pause. No, do not contact press. Not now. He ended that call and turned to Isabella. Your school administrator preserved camera servers and signed preliminary affidavit. Keene insured it. Isabella stared at him. You did all that in under an hour. I did what this required. Rourke's voice snapped over open channel. All units stand by. Suspect visual confirmed at southeast window. Child not visible. Negotiator attempting contact. The air in the van changed. Even the hum of electronics seemed to quiet. Karim answered the negotiator on speaker after the third attempt. His voice came smooth, almost amused. This is a family matter. I have lawful papers. Rourke responded, calm and flat. You can discuss paperwork at the station. Send the child out first. No. Isabella's fingers dug into the foil blanket. Raphael shifted one step closer, but did not touch her. Karim continued, smile audible now. Tell Isabella to stop pretending she can protect anyone. She can barely pay rent. Raphael's hand curled once at his side. When he spoke, his tone was quiet enough that only Isabella heard. Stay seated. The negotiator kept talking, buying seconds. Tactical units moved on silent feet along the warehouse wall, dark shapes between pallets and steel drums. On the screen, one camera angle flickered, then stabilized. Then Lena's voice came faintly through the negotiator line, thin with tears but clear enough to cut through every adult in the van. Mama? Isabella lunged toward the door. Raphael caught her forearm, firm and careful, and held until she met his eyes. You go out there. He uses you, he said. You stay here. She comes back. Her whole body shook with refusal, with animal panic, with the urge to run through concrete if it meant 1 inch closer to her child. Rourke's command burst over comms. Entry teams move, move. Everything compressed. Boots on metal stairs, a door strike. Someone shouting, police down. A crash of toppled crates. Karim yelling, words blurred by echo. Isabella heard one sharp crack that might have been a shot or a pipe hit and felt the sound in her teeth. Keene gripped her shoulder and pushed her lower behind the van console. Eyes down, the officer ordered. Isabella could not. She stared at the live feed until a tactical officer appeared carrying a small body wrapped in yellow raincoat and purple backpack strap hanging loose. Lena's sneakers kicked once, then locked around the officer's waist as if she had remembered how to hold on. Isabella was already moving before anyone told her she could. She reached the loading bay threshold and dropped to her knees on wet concrete as Lena was transferred into her arms. Her daughter's face was blotched with crying, hair damp, cheeks cold. No visible blood, no obvious fractures. Trembling, hard and continuous. "Mama, mama, mama," Lena repeated against her neck. "I have you." Isabella's voice broke and reformed around the words. "I have you." Behind them, commands continued. Karim was brought down the stairs in cuffs, still talking, still smiling with split composure, shouting that this would collapse in court. Rourke ignored him. Keene stepped between him and Isabella without being asked. Raphael arrived at her side and crouched, one knee to concrete, coat darkened at the hem. "Ambulance now," he called. "Pediatric first." A paramedic team took over with efficient gentleness. Pulse ox on Lena's finger, flashlight to pupils, blanket wrap, trauma checklist spoken in low voices. Another medic approached Isabella again, this time for shock assessment and shoulder reevaluation. She could not unclench her left hand. When she looked down, she realized she was gripping her scarf so hard the fabric had stiffened where her scraped knuckles had bled into wool. "Can you release for me?" the medic asked. She tried and failed. Raphael reached in, not to pry, only to steady her wrist while she forced one finger open, then another. "Good," he said quietly. "Keep breathing." Lena was loaded first. Isabella climbed in beside her, foil blankets slipping to the floor. Through the open ambulance doors, she saw Raphael standing with Rourke beneath the warehouse lights. Both men listening to evidence techs, both already moving to the next necessary thing while her world narrowed to her daughter's small hand, trapped in hers. The doors shut. Sirens stayed off. They drove. At St. Anne's, they were routed through a side entrance with 2 uniformed officers at the corridor bend and a pediatric trauma team waiting with warmed blankets, a child psychologist, and an intake nurse who knelt before Lena instead of towering over her. "You are very brave," the nurse said. "I'm going to check your heartbeat while Mama stays right here." Lena nodded without releasing Isabella's sleeve. Isabella answered questions about allergies, prior injuries, nightmares, custody documents, school contacts, emergency numbers, and every answer sounded like someone else's life read aloud. An hour after extraction, they moved Isabella and Lena to a police safe room on the hospital's secured floor. White walls, bolted table, 2 padded chairs, 1 narrow couch, and a humming vent that made silence feel mechanical. Lena fell asleep curled against her side with a stuffed fox a social worker had found from the play cart. The child's breathing evened out in damp little puffs against Isabella's sweater. Only then did the adrenaline begin to drain, leaving shaking cold and a deep ache behind her eyes. A knock came, then the door opened halfway. Officer Keene stepped in first, scanned the room, and nodded to someone behind her. Raphael entered without his coat. His black dress shirt was torn near the left side seam, and a medic stood beside him with gauze and tape. A dark line of old scar tissue ran across his lower ribs, reopened at one edge where fresh blood had seeped through. Not life-threatening, not new. A wound with history. Isabella frowned despite exhaustion. "You were hit?" "Shrapnel from a broken bracket when entry stack moved past the stairwell," he said. "Minor." The medic gave him a look that said minor was not the same as ignorable, and finished securing the dressing before leaving. Keene remained by the door, present and neutral witness. Raphael stayed standing, as if sitting would claim intimacy he had not been offered. Detective Rourke asked me to relay status. Karim Darzi is in custody, booked on kidnapping, assault, and weapons charges, pending formal filing. Emergency no-contact order was granted verbally and will be signed in writing before dawn. Your attorney has been notified. The words were procedural and perfect. But his gaze had shifted once to Lena's sleeping face, and stayed there longer than protocol required. Isabella watched him in the fluorescent quiet. The myth she had built around him, black car, silent men, influence that bent institutions, did not include torn fabric and a medic taping an old scar while he refused pain medication to keep his head clear. It did not include the way his hands remained open at his sides when he spoke to her, never crowding her space. "Why were you watching my block?" she asked. Her voice was low to avoid waking Lena. "Don't give me a polished answer." For the first time since the school curb, he looked away before answering. When he spoke, the control in his tone remained, but something underneath it thinned into grief. "My sister was taken during a custody exchange 9 years ago," he said. "The court believed the wrong version of events until it was late. We got her son back. We did not get her back." Isabella's chest tightened. He continued, eyes still on the wall rather than on her. "When you treated my nephew in the ER, he would not speak to men, not even me. He spoke to you. Months later, I saw you outside your building with Lena, and she looked at every parked car before she looked at the playground. Same pattern, same panic hidden as good behavior." His jaw flexed once. "I told my security chief to keep distance and to report only direct threats. I should have told you. I did not because I expected refusal and because I did not want gratitude. I wanted warning time, if danger came." The safe room's vent hummed. Lena shifted in sleep and pressed closer to Isabella's side. Isabella sat very still, feeling two truths collide. She had been observed without consent, and that observation had carved the minutes that might have saved her daughter. Anger and relief moved through her in alternating waves that made neither simple. "You made yourself judge and guardian at once," she said. "Yes. Do you do that often?" "In many matters," he said. "In yours, I was trying not to." The honesty landed harder than apology would have. He did not ask forgiveness. He offered motive and consequence and left the judgment in her hands. She glanced at the taped wound at his ribs. "That scar? Your sister?" He nodded once. "The night we found the house." No details, no performance. Just the fact placed between them like evidence that did not need embellishment. Officer Keene cleared her throat softly, checking her watch. "Ms. Hassan, social services will come in 20 minutes for temporary safety planning. Mr. Vieri, Detective Rourke needs your statement finalized." Raphael inclined his head. He looked to Isabella at last, dark eyes steady and unreadable, except for fatigue. "I will remain available through the night for logistics only. Housing options, transport, legal coordination. You choose. No decisions under pressure." He stepped back toward the door, then paused. "Your daughter asked for me by name on the emergency phone. Dispatch confirmed the transcript. She remembered what I told her at the Community Safety Day last spring." His voice lowered. "If she ever cannot find you, she asks for the nearest woman in uniform first. She did that too." Isabella looked down at Lena's sleeping face and felt her throat close for an entirely different reason. When she looked up, Raphael was still waiting, blood at his side contained by clean white gauze, power held in check by visible effort. And for the first time, she saw not a man collecting debts, but a man trying, in the only language he trusted, to keep history from repeating. Isabella did not answer him at once. She kept one hand on Lena's back, feeling each shallow, tired breath, and looked at the white tape crossing his ribs as if it were another document she needed to assess for authenticity. In the fluorescent hum of the safe room, nothing about him matched the simplified version she had used to keep herself clear of his world. He was still dangerous, still precise, still surrounded by men who moved when he moved. But grief had cut a visible line through that control. And the line reached her in a place she had spent years keeping locked. "You said logistics only," she said, voice low. "Then logistics starts with this. No one watches my building again without my consent." Raphael gave one short nod. "Understood." Not verbal, written. She lifted her eyes to Officer Keene. "Witnessed." Keene's posture shifted from observer to recorder. She pulled a notepad from her vest pocket and clicked her pen. "I can note a voluntary condition statement." Isabella continued, looking at Raphael again. "Any information about me or Lena goes through my attorney unless there is immediate danger." Immediate danger means active threat, not instinct, not caution, not history. His expression did not harden. If anything, it grew more intent, as though he respected the force in her words more than he would have respected panic. "Agreed. Immediate threat threshold only." "And your staff does not approach my daughter alone? Ever? Not in school, not at church, not on sidewalks, nowhere. If she needs help, they call 911 first and me second." "Accepted." She held his gaze one beat longer, making sure consent was not theater. "Say it clearly." Raphael's voice stayed even, but the room seemed to tighten around it. "No surveillance without your written consent. No contact with Lena without your authorization, unless there is immediate, active danger. All communication routed through counsel and documented." Keene wrote each line, then tore the page cleanly and handed it across for signatures. Raphael signed first with a pen he produced from his inner pocket. Decisive stroke, no hesitation. Isabella signed beneath him, her hand still trembling enough that the last letter of her name leaned into the margin. Keene countersigned and photographed the document for incident files. The formal act should have lowered her pulse. Instead, the nearness of him, the contained intensity in his face, and the way he accepted every boundary without bargaining made her chest feel crowded. Fear did not recede. It changed shape. It stood beside a pull she did not trust, an involuntary recognition of steadiness in a man built for pressure. A soft knock interrupted the silence. The family services advocate entered with a rolling folder and a paper cup carrier balanced against her wrist. "I'm sorry to intrude. I have emergency placement forms, trauma follow-up referrals, and hot chocolate if she wakes." Isabella almost laughed at the ordinary mercy of that last item and swallowed it before sound came out. "Thank you." The advocate set the forms on the table and lowered her voice after seeing Lena asleep. "Given the abduction and pending charges, we can request temporary confidential address status by morning. We'll also flag school release protocol with photo verification and code phrase." Raphael stepped back toward the wall, putting distance between himself and the paperwork as promised. He did not speak until the advocate asked, "Transport support is listed here from a private security provider. Is that arrangement still being offered?" Only then did he answer. "Offered, not imposed. She chooses routes and schedule." Isabella signed the first set of forms, then the second. Her shoulder throbbed with each movement. Fatigue made the letters swim. Across the room, Raphael took a call, voice barely above a murmur. "Yes. Chain of custody receipts scanned." A pause. "No, we do not release names." Another pause, then colder. Then tell him again. "Access denied." He ended the call and looked to Keene. Karim Darzi's counsel requested contact with Ms. Hassan and the child. Denied under emergency no contact order. Request logged at 10:46 p.m. External contact. Outcome immediate. Isabella closed her eyes briefly, then opened them. "Thank you for refusing it." I did not refuse it, he said. The law refused it. I enforced distance. That answer settled something jagged inside her. He was powerful enough to overstep and disciplined enough, at least in this room, not to claim what was not his. 23 minutes later, Lena woke with a sharp inhale and grabbed for Isabella's sleeve, eyes wide and unfocused. Don't let him take me. I'm here, Isabella whispered, gathering her close despite the pain in her shoulder. No one takes you. Lena's gaze found Raphael by the wall. She stared for one uncertain second, then held out her hand from under the blanket with the unfiltered trust of a child who had already decided what safety looked like. You came. He crossed the room slowly, stopping short of the couch until Isabella gave a small nod. Then he crouched to Lena's eye level, forearms on his knees, no sudden movement. I came, he said. You said if I got scared, I ask for a woman in uniform first. Lena sniffed and wiped her nose with the back of her hand. I did that. Then I asked for you. You did exactly right. His voice softened without losing gravity. You were brave and smart. Lena studied the tape at his ribs. Are you hurt? Only a little. Isabella watched that exchange and felt a dangerous warmth rise beneath exhaustion, not fantasy, not surrender, but the beginning of trust at the exact point where trust had failed her before. She wanted to lean toward it. She wanted to run from it. Both instincts were honest. A harder knock came this time, followed by Detective Rourke entering with a tablet and an evidence envelope. He kept his tone professional but direct. Ms. Hassan, we need your recorded statement while events are fresh. Child advocate can stay with Lena for 10 minutes. Officer Keene remains present. Isabella looked at Lena. The girl had already reclined against the pillow again, hands still wrapped around the stuffed fox. The advocate moved to the couch, speaking in a low, soothing cadence about star stickers and warm drinks. Isabella stood, knees unsteady, and crossed to the bolted table. Rourke opened the evidence envelope and slid a printed sheet toward her. Preliminary transcript from 911. Child request includes the phrase, "The man in the black car, Mr. Vieri." Dispatch routing confirmed. We need you to verify whether your daughter had prior safety instruction from him. Isabella answered carefully, each word placed. Yes, at a neighborhood safety event in spring, public setting. He told children to find women in uniform if separated from a parent. Rourke nodded and typed. Good. That supports reasonableness, not coaching. Next. Suspect statements at school and warehouse. We need exact language. She repeated Karim's words in sequence, including the line about judges trusting him more than a tired woman with 2 jobs and no witnesses. Saying it aloud in an official room changed its weight. It stopped being a private humiliation and became evidence. Rourke asked one final question. Do you fear further intimidation attempts from him or his representatives? Yes. Do you consent to full no-contact conditions, including third-party communication blocks? Yes. Rourke set the tablet down. Then we draw this line tonight. The door opened before he finished the sentence. A uniformed officer stepped in, tense. Detective, Darcy is being moved from booking to county holding. He's refusing transport unless he can deliver a statement to the victim. Rourke did not turn. He can deliver it to his attorney. He's insisting it concerns the child's real safety. Raphael spoke from the wall, each syllable controlled enough to carry threat without volume. Predators call control safety when they are losing control. Rourke glanced at Isabella. You want him heard? The old reflex rose, the one that said, appease, de-escalate, keep proceedings smooth, so men in suits called her cooperative. She felt it, recognized it, and set it down. No, he had every chance to speak without harming us. He chose this. Rourke nodded to the officer. Document refusal and proceed transport. As the officer left, a male voice carried faintly from the corridor beyond the second security door, polished and strained at once. Karim. Even muffled by walls, Isabella knew the cadence. Isabella, tell them this is a misunderstanding. Her throat tightened, then cleared. She stood before anyone could ask her to stay seated and walked to the safe room door until she could see him through reinforced glass at the far end of the hall. Wrists cuffed, suit wrinkled for the first time in years. He still wore that public smile, but it flickered at the edges. He saw her and straightened. There you are. Tell them. No. Her voice did not shake. You do not speak to me. You do not speak to my daughter, ever again. The smile thinned. You're making a legal mistake. You made the mistake when you touched her. He leaned toward the escorting officers, still trying to perform calm. She is unstable. You're watching it. Raphael moved to stand half a step behind Isabella, not touching, a dark, steady presence at her shoulder. When he spoke, it was low and final enough that even the officers looked up. You do not speak to her again. Karim's eyes cut to him, fury flashing through the charm like a crack through glass. This isn't your family. Raphael did not blink. You forfeited that claim. Rourke stepped forward then, reclaiming procedural space with a raised hand. Transport now. The officers turned Karim toward the elevator. He twisted once as if searching for one last opening, found none, and disappeared behind closing metal doors. Silence dropped in the corridor, dense and ringing. Isabella stayed where she was until the elevator indicator changed floors and kept moving down. Only then did she exhale, long and unsteady, and realize her hands were open, not clenched. Back in the safe room, Lena had drifted to sleep again with a stuffed fox tucked beneath her chin. The advocate gathered signed forms into ordered stacks. Keene handed Isabella a copy of the condition statement she and Raphael had signed, then a second document confirming temporary no-contact enforcement pending morning judicial signature. Physical evidence logged. External contacts answered. Threat language recorded. Boundary declared. Raphael remained near the door, giving her the room she had demanded, but his gaze held hers for a brief, charged moment that carried no pressure and no retreat. Your terms stand, he said. I stand with them. Isabella looked at the sleeping shape of her daughter, at the papers spread across the table like a map out of a life built on endurance alone. Then back at the man in the torn black shirt who had accepted limits as the price of staying near. Fear remained. So did the pull. This time, she chose to name both. Then we do this my way, she said. His answer came without delay. Your way. Your way, he said again. And this time he stepped fully into the hallway, leaving the safe room door open so she could see that he meant it. Officer Keene stayed until the advocate finished the last form. At 12:14 a.m., she set a second paper cup near Isabella's elbow and said, Dispatch supervisor called back about your earlier suspicious activity report from the apartment. They pulled the log and attached it to tonight's case. It won't sit in a backlog now. Isabella looked up sharply. The report from 2 nights ago? The breathing at the door? Keene nodded. Included. Also, evidence tech recovered 2 cigarette butts from your 3rd-floor landing and shoe impressions in water by the stairwell. Preliminary comparison links 1 print pattern to shoes seized from Darcy's vehicle. Lab will confirm. The old fear in Isabella's spine eased by a fraction. not because it erased what happened, but because the detail that had haunted her was no longer floating, unnamed, in the dark. "Thank you." Rourke returned with a clear evidence pouch. Inside lay her wool scarf, dried blood darkening one corner, and a property tag clipped to the seal. "We photographed it, swabbed it, and logged it with your injury documentation," he said. "Do you consent to keep it in evidence through trial?" She stared at the scarf, at how ordinary it looked in plastic. "Yes, keep it." He set down another small bag, Lena's right sneaker insole with the stitched tracker removed and tagged. Digital forensics copied the beacon history. Chain of custody signed. "Do you want the tracker reinstalled for continued use?" "Yes," she said, then added, "In both shoes this time." Rourke gave the first faint hint of a smile she had seen on him. "Already ordered." At 12:32 a.m., her attorney, Miriam Salt, arrived with damp hair, a winter coat over court clothes, and a rolling case full of binders. She read the signed condition statement, reviewed the no-contact order, and sat across from Isabella with a legal pad braced on one knee. "We move on 3 tracks before sunrise," Miriam said quietly. "Criminal prosecution, family court emergency modification, and housing confidentiality. You have records that make this clean. I need every item." Isabella slid her worn evidence folder across the table. Custody receipts, certified copies, screenshots, debt call logs, school emails, the non-emergency incident number, and the peephole photos time-stamped in yellow kitchen light. Miriam flipped through with rapid precision. "This is excellent documentation," she said. "Exhausting, but excellent." Isabella let out a breath that almost shook into a laugh. "I collected it because no one believed me without paper." "Paper believes you," Miriam said. "Judges do too when it's this tight." At 1:07 a.m., while Lena slept curled against the stuffed fox, Raphael re-entered only after Keene asked if Isabella wanted him in the briefing. She nodded once. Rourke projected still images onto the wall. School gate footage, Kareem's hand on Lena's wrist, the shove into the railing, plate capture from the gray SUV, warehouse entry timestamps, and a frame from a traffic camera showing the cloned plate overlay peeling at one edge. Then he clicked to the penthouse garage stills. The trembling valet, shoulders hunched, keys on wet concrete. The black sedan at the far curb. "The valet's name is Thomas Vale," Rourke said. He gave a full statement. "Darcy approached him that afternoon with cash and a copy of your likely pickup schedule. Asked whether you exited by service every Thursday. When Vale saw your ex waiting early, he realized what he had enabled and panicked. He dropped the keys because Darcy's driver was watching him. He's cooperating and accepted witness protection relocation for now." Isabella's throat tightened. The strange look, the shaking hands, the dropped keys were no longer an omen without language. They had shape, motive, consequence. Rourke switched to another slide. Building hallway photos, cigarette brand packaging from Kareem's glove compartment, the same brand from her landing. "Circumstantial by itself," he said, strong in pattern with the print and timeline. Miriam tapped her pen once. "And forged emergency custody papers?" "Recovered in Darcy's briefcase, printer trace pending. School release protocol showed no court update. He lied on scene." Raphael listened without interruption, arms loose at his sides, eyes on the wall, not on her. When Rourke finished, he said only, "No private pressure on witnesses from my side. We keep this courtroom clean." Miriam met his gaze. "Good. Because if anyone taints this, I will use your name in open court as easily as his." Raphael inclined his head. "Understood." By 8:40 a.m., after a shower in the secured floor bathroom and borrowed clothes from victim services, Isabella walked into arraignment with her shoulder braced under a charcoal blazer, and Lena in a child advocacy suite 2 floors above, with a trauma counselor and coloring pencils. Raphael sat in the second row, not beside her, a deliberate gap between them. Keen sat on the aisle. Miriam stood first chair. Karim entered in county khaki, hands uncuffed at counsel table. For one suspended moment he wore that old polished expression, the one built for donors and judges and cameras. Then the clerk read charges into the microphone. Kidnapping of a minor, assault, unlawful restraint, weapons offenses, document fraud. And the mask thinned. When the prosecutor played the 911 transcript, Lena's small recorded voice filled the courtroom, asking for a woman in uniform, then asking for Mr. Vieri, the man in the black car, by name. No dramatics followed, just silence, heavy and exact. Karim turned halfway toward the gallery and found Isabella. His smile returned, brittle and practiced. "You're overreaching," he mouthed. She did not lower her eyes. She did not answer at all. The judge set high bail with remand, signed the expanded no-contact order, and granted immediate temporary sole legal and physical custody to Isabella pending full hearing. Gavel. Next matter called. Outside the courtroom doors, Karim tried once more while deputies moved him. "Isabella, listen to me. This will ruin Lena's future." Raphael stepped into the corridor line, not blocking officers, not touching anyone, voice low enough that only those nearest heard. "You do not speak to her again." Karim looked at him with naked hate and said nothing else. 2 weeks later, on the first Monday of December, trial began in Superior Court. Snow had crusted gray at the curb, and courthouse heat smelled like wet wool and old paper. Lena did not attend. Her testimony came by recorded forensic interview accepted by stipulation, with child advocate present and defense objections overruled. Isabella testified for 3 hours. She identified her scarf in evidence, the split seam in her shoe from that week, the rent notice photo, the non-emergency report, the school app tracker log, and the encrypted message to Raphael time-stamped seconds after abduction. Under cross-examination, defense counsel tried to frame panic as confusion, then influence. Miriam objected twice, sustained twice. Rourke authenticated chain of custody packets. Keen authenticated dispatch and field response. Thomas Vale, hands visibly shaking, admitted he took money and then warned no one because he was afraid. "I thought maybe it was just custody arguing," he said. "Then I saw the child crying. I knew." Ballistics tied Karim's gun to the warehouse shot into a steel beam. Document experts proved the emergency custody papers were fabricated. The stairwell cigarette and shoe print evidence did not carry the case alone, but they reinforced stalking behavior before the abduction. Verdict came at 4:16 p.m. on a Thursday. Guilty on kidnapping and assault. Guilty on weapons charges. Guilty on document fraud. The judge imposed a high-security transfer and permanent no-contact provisions, including third-party communication bans and digital contact restrictions. At the final family court disposition hearing the following week, the judge converted the temporary order to final judgment. Isabella was granted final sole legal and sole physical custody, and Karim's custodial and visitation rights were terminated in full. When the words landed, Isabella did not cry. Her body simply unlocked, one held breath after another, like a door finally opening on swollen hinges. That evening, she and Lena stood in the empty, secured apartment she had selected herself from 3 options, victim services approved. 3rd floor again, by her choice, but with working heat, reinforced entry, camera at the building door, and windows that sealed tight against harbor wind. Boxes sat along one wall. A thrift store lamp threw warm light across clean paint. Lena ran from room to room in sock feet, then returned clutching the old paper fox from school, edges bent but intact. "Can this go by my bed?" "Yes," Isabella said. "First thing." A knock sounded. 2 short taps, then 1. The code they had agreed on with security. Isabella checked the monitor screen before opening. Raphael stood outside with no entourage visible, holding 2 paper bags that smelled like lentil soup and fresh bread. "You can say no," he said through the door. "Dinner drop only." She opened it halfway, chain still latched, and studied his face. Fatigue under his eyes, no impatience, no demand. Chainstays. Chainstays. She unlatched it and let him set the bags on the narrow kitchen counter. Lena appeared, took one look and said, "You brought the good bread." A small, surprised softness crossed his expression. "I did." They ate at unpacked cardboard height, 3 bowls, 1 spoon missing because it was still in a box labeled Kitchen 2. Conversation stayed practical and warm. School transfer forms for the temporary period. Pediatric follow-up appointment date confirmed. The tracker reinstall completed in both sneakers, with documented consent and attorney copy. Debt collectors had been served with a cease harassment notice by Miriam's office after unlawful third-party calls. The landlord dispute file remained open, but municipal housing inspection had cited the old apartment for heat violations, and her security deposit return was now court-ordered. After Lena fell asleep under a new quilt with the paper fox and stuffed fox side by side, Isabella walked Raphael to the door. Snow tapped softly against the hallway window. She kept one hand on the frame. "This remains conditional," she said. "You and me. Any step beyond what we agreed, and it stops." His gaze held hers, steady, unflinching. "Conditional is honest. I accept honest." She nodded. "Then we continue slowly." He gave a single nod in return and moved back into the corridor, stopping before the stairwell light. "You are legally safe now," he said. "If fear comes back at night, call anyway. Not because you owe me, because you don't stand alone." When he left, she locked the door, checked it once, then once more out of habit, and stood in the quiet with heat finally rising through the vents and her daughter sleeping in the next room. Safety was no longer a favor. It was documented, signed, enforced, and chosen.